You know that feeling, right? You spend weeks, maybe even months, building what you're sure is the perfect process for your team. You've mapped out every single step, you've picked the perfect software, and then, the moment people actually start using it, it just falls apart. It's an incredibly common story, and the reason why it happens is probably not what you think.
So let's start by looking at the symptoms. Why do our most carefully constructed systems seem to break down the second they meet the real world?
I mean, does this feel familiar? That nagging sense that no matter how much you plan, something always goes sideways. You create a system that's supposed to save time, and suddenly everyone is more confused than before. If you're nodding your head right now, trust me, you are not alone.
And here are the classic culprits. According to research from Process Driven, we build these amazing things in a total vacuum without ever talking to the people who will actually have to use them. Or we get so excited about a new idea that we try to change everything at once and just totally overwhelm the team. And maybe the biggest one of all, creating a culture where people are just too afraid to say, hey, this isn't working.
So what's our first instinct? We blame the tool, right? Or the workflow. We think, oh, maybe if I just tweak this one setting, or, you know what, let's find a new app. But this is how we get stuck in a frustrating loop, because we're just fixing the symptoms, not the real root cause.
Because the real issue, it isn't about the technology at all. It's human. The cracks we see appearing in our systems are actually revealing much deeper fractures in our company culture. Okay, check this out. A recent report from Lattice found that a staggering 44% of HR leaders feel more and more pressure from the C-suite to justify their people programs. Now, just think about what that really means. If the top leadership is only focused on justifying costs, that pressure doesn't just stay in the boardroom. It creates this current of anxiety that flows through the entire company.
And that disconnect? It becomes crystal clear when you look at something like recovering from layoffs. While 74% of HR leaders, the people on the ground, know it takes over 4 months for a team's morale to bounce back, 2/3 of the C-suite expect a full recovery in under 3. This isn't just a little disagreement, it's two groups looking at the same situation and seeing completely different realities of the human experience at work.
So here's the big takeaway. When your shiny new invoicing system fails, it's probably not because the software is bad. It's because the culture doesn't support the change. The real breakdown is happening in the conversations, in the level of trust, and in the sense of safety within your team.
And this brings us to the core solution, the one concept that underpins every successful team and every resilient system, and that is psychological safety.
Now, I know it might sound a little academic, but the idea is actually pretty simple. The Texilla International Journal defines it as the shared belief that you won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up. It's answering the question, can you ask a dumb question, challenge an idea, or even admit a mistake without being afraid? If the answer is yes, that's psychological safety.
And listen, this isn't just some feel-good theory. When Google spent 2 years studying over 180 of its own teams to figure out the secret to their success, this was the single most important factor they found. It was more important than how smart individuals were, the team structure, or even who the manager was. Safety was number one.
And the impact on the business, it's massive. Teams with high psychological safety report 50% higher productivity, 76% more engagement, and 27% lower employee turnover. When people feel safe, they don't just work harder. They bring their best, most innovative, and creative ideas to the table. So, if safety is the key, then who holds the blueprint? Well, the answer is leadership. Leaders are the #1 architects of a team's culture.
Research from the Global Scientific Journal really highlights 2 different paths a leader can take. On one side, you've got transactional leaders. They manage by exception and focus on rewards. You know, the classic, if you do this, you get that. It's all about maintaining stability. But on the other side, you have transformational leaders. They're visionary, they're inclusive, and they actively encourage creativity and change. One style just manages the work, the other builds the trust and safety a team needs to truly thrive.
This quote from Donald Knight, the CPO at Greenhouse, just sums it all up perfectly. Effective leadership today isn't just about the metrics or the strategy alone. It's a dance between the hard data and the human element, the heart. It's all about building a culture where people feel valued enough to actually want to drive that strategy forward. Okay, so let's bring this all together. How do you actually stop fixing symptoms and start building that foundation of safety that makes all your systems actually work? Here's the blueprint. Step 1, prioritize safety over systems. This means you stop obsessing over the perfect workflow and you start obsessing over a no-blame culture where problems are seen as learning opportunities, not failures.
Step 2. Lead with inclusion. As a leader, you have to go first. Be the one to admit you don't have all the answers. Actively invite different perspectives, especially from the quietest people in the room. 3. Bridge that gap with the C-suite. Use that hard data, like the stats we saw earlier, to show that a safe culture isn't a nice-to-have, it's a performance driver. And finally, step 4, maintain it with intention. Safety isn't a project you finish. It's a practice you have to cultivate day in and day out, with regular check-ins and consistent behavior.
And that brings us to the final and most important question to ask yourself. Right now, in your own workplace, is it truly safer to speak up with a new idea, or to point out a difficult truth, or is it just easier for everyone to stay silent? The answer to that question, well, it reveals everything.